have. One of them, you're a big proponent of, the yellow flag statute. In my limited research, one of the biggest critiques I found was that, you know, police haven't really done these weapons restraints because there aren't enough medical professionals to perform these evaluations. Is this something you're looking to fix within the state?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think yellow flag laws are the way to go, because what we find is that these mass shooters, particularly when they attack children, almost invariably are mentally ill. So this offers a way for us to separate mentally ill people who pose a threat to themselves or others from their guns. And obviously you need a court's involvement. We're dealing with Second Amendment rights here. And you need, I believe, a medical professional's assessment. These laws are new, so I don't think we can draw conclusions, even though there are general shortages of healthcare professionals dealing with people who have mental illness. But I think it's too soon to say that they are not effective. And in fact, we have found that in some states with either yellow flag or red flag laws, that the rate of suicides has gone down. So that suggests to me that they can be effective in preventing violence.
Right, and I don't think anybody here disagrees that providing any form of barrier between somebody and accessing a way for harm shouldn't be used. But if you're advocating for this on the national stage, are you also prepared to say, hey, we need support in the medical field for people to be quick and ready to access these mental health assessments so we can get a gun out of somebody's hands without having to wait for a medical professional who's not available?
We have to have a medical professional assessment, in my view. Not every red flag law requires that. And perhaps that's because, as you said, it can be difficult to find a medical professional, but I'm working on that front too, to try to increase the supply of mental health providers in our country. That's absolutely essential. But if you don't have a medical assessment, then you have a situation where a judge or a police officer who are very well intended but don't have the expertise to make this judgment having to do so. And that's why I think Maine got it right in requiring a medical professional's assessment. Not all red flag laws do that, but in my view, that's an essential requirement.
So you think it has to come from a medical professional and not from a judge or a law enforcement officer. So therefore, you are not in favor of stricter laws in the future here in Maine?
I think that Maine got it right. In Maine, you involve the medical professional, the police officer, and the judge. They all three are going to be involved. And there are due process protections built in. The order is good for a year with one chance to challenge it during a year, but then it has to be reviewed and renewed. And that makes sense to me, because you don't want a situation, think how difficult that is for a police officer to make an assessment of whether a person definitely poses a threat to others unless there's awfully good evidence of that. So to me, this strengthens the law by having a medical professional involved. So I think Maine got it right, and it's a model. But I do want to emphasize that under the bill that we're working on, that I'm about to go to a meeting for, we would leave it up to the state on exactly how to structure the process in that state. But I think Maine got it right.
Yeah. Now, Senator Collins, now that you're on the national stage talking now that you're on the national stage talking about gun legislation reform, a lot of people are kind of hammering down on the NRA and their contributions to politicians. You've had contributions from the NRA before, but now you're on the national stage talking about gun reform. What would you say those people who are critical of you taking NRA donations in the past and still advocating for legislation?
First of all, no outside group controls how I vote. I did not receive the endorsement of the NRA, but I was very proud to receive the endorsement of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, SAM. That's the group that I work closely with, and they were very involved in helping to draft Maine's yellow flag law in a very constructive way. But you know better than to assume that any outside group would determine my vote. But the fact is, I didn't get endorsed by the NRA. I think you're confusing it with the Sportsman Alliance of Maine. And I did get endorsed by SAM, and I'm very proud to have that endorsement.
Do you support armed guards in schools?
Well, you know, I think that's up to local schools, but we are looking at whether or not we can come up with some best practices and some funding for school security as part of our discussion. So that there was an armed guard at the school in Texas, and regrettably that did not stop this horrific attack